Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's RD2RD Live Show, where we are talking all about productivity and time management with Heather Neal. And I've kind of alluded to this a little bit as I've been talking up this episode, but I have a secret crush on Heather's organizational skills and execution. Just someone who really does a lot of what matters in her business, but also does it with a great deal of organization and makes it look easy, which I know anytime someone is doing something and making it look easy, it's because one, they're amazing, and two, they have a lot of systems on the back end. So today we're going to do a deep dive into Heather's approach to getting things done, not just around, how to make a to-do list, but really a bigger, broader look at growing your business from the angle of using your time effectively, balancing organizing and planning with action. So this is going to be a lot of fun today, and we're taking your questions as well. So if you have something that's burning around the topic, definitely drop it in now or as we go along. Feel free to kind of ask questions and I will follow up, take a look at those throughout today's show. So without further ado, Heather, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background about your career as a dietitian and also talking a little bit about, we all excel in certain areas and how your career kind of helped you really do this well, and I think better than most.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I hope we can talk about time management and still make it sound fun. I not like completely nerdy. Um, but yeah, so just a little bit of background. I have been an entrepreneur for 12 years, I think now, and it has looked so different over the course of those years. I started out more in the blogging space when that was like a really popular thing, and then just kind of have transitioned through a bunch of different roles along the way, virtual practice, online courses and programs, and where I am now, which is helping other dietitians with their business. So it's looked so different over the years, but right now it's really focusing on helping other people do what I'm doing just because I love it so much. So one of the things I love best about being a dietitian is that there's so many different options for us and we don't have to fit in this one little teeny tiny box. And like you've mentioned, learning how to prioritize my time and recognize what I'm good at and what I'm not, and what I like and what I don't like has been such a game changer for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point about knowing what you're good at, and really a system that works for you might not necessarily be a good fit for somebody else. But we're going to kind of talk about those big bucket, I think, topics that really do apply across the board, and just a window into how that process looked for you over the last, oh my gosh, 12 years. That's hard to believe. Saying that number out loud, I'm sure, kind of makes you go, whoa, this
Like, I'm
is,
not old enough for that.
yeah. You're like, oh man, maybe not. Time has a way of just keep marching on. So I want to just first start out with all the things. I don't know about all of you listening in, but there is so much to do when you're starting a business, trying to grow your business. From your perspective, how do you handle kind of the just pressures of being an entrepreneur, just all the things?
Yeah, so I mean, it's true. It can feel like a lot sometimes, especially because when you go and do things on your own, they kind of just mix into your life in general. You don't have this like clearly delineated, okay, I'm at work, I'm at home. It just you've got all this stuff going together. So when the pressure gets really high for me, when I'm not enjoying it, when I'm like, man, I'm just gonna quit, like forget this. Like, I mean, I have those moments. And when I do, it really comes back to me that this is my choice. So if I want to quit, like I sit down and I think, what would that really look like? I'm like, there's just too much on my plate. I cannot handle this. What would it look like instead? And when I start picturing what that would look like or what my different options would be, I always come back to what I'm doing right now. And this is my choice. And yes, there are hard moments, but I don't want the alternatives. So it really just kind of helps to gain a little bit of perspective that way.
Oh, that's super. I think that's really important that even, people who maybe we admire, we look at, if you think that those people don't have regular moments where they want to throw in the towel, I think you're kidding yourself because no matter what you do, whether you're working in a corporate job or being an entrepreneur, there are days everybody wants to quit their job, no matter what that job is. And I think the point though you make about, okay, stop and taking a breath and looking at, okay, if I make that decision, or what would it look like, and really collecting yourself and um, talking about, okay, what can I change about what's on my plate, or how can I tackle this? So let's kind of talk there. What have you learned along the way? I mean, over 12 years, I'm sure you've had moments where things have gone well, things haven't gone well. Anything that's like super significant that stands out for you as just important in this process?
In terms of like being overwhelmed or,
Yeah, of kind of learning how to, you know, I guess really find that focus again, as your business
yeah.
has changed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know if there's like one particular thing that stands out, but anytime I'm in like a stressful situation, and there have been, for me, it's figuring out, is this stressful because I'm the one? Like, am I the source of the pressure? Am I putting too much on myself? Am I expecting too much of myself? Am I making this really big thing? In reality, it's not. Or is it a sign that I need to make a shift? And like I told you, I've shifted a lot. I've done a lot of different things. And usually that comes is because I've reached a place where I'm like, you know what, this isn't working for me right now. And it's because of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So really taking a step back there and then pivoting, shifting, whatever it is you need to do to figure out how to bring that situation back to something that you're enjoying. Or if it's something that you've gone through and then it's passed, to really take that time and evaluate why it got to that point. Like,
Mm,
why were you stressed out, or why did you feel the pressure? If something went wrong, like, why did it go wrong? And what can you do to handle it better next time or to prevent it?
yeah, it's good stuff there. So I think one of the things that me personally, and I'm sure others as well, there's kind of two parallel things, right? As a business owner, we have a ton of these ongoing tasks that we kind of have to keep on top of. They don't go away. There's stuff we need to be doing all of the time. And then we're managing really big projects, maybe a launch, or, a new service, or, something that's big that we need to complete, but isn't necessarily going to be ongoing. How do you know, let's tackle kind of this ongoing task, and maybe start to break this topic down a little bit for us.
Well, I feel like the ongoing tasks are sometimes the ones that get lost in the sea of everything else that's going on. But if you don't do them or have a way of keeping track of them, that's when things kind of start to snowball and you feel a little bit more of that pressure just because these maintenance things that aren't happening. So I know it's more exciting to dive into the bigger ones or something new, but it can also be really simple to keep track of these ongoing things and make them manageable. So I think the easiest one is really having some way to organize them that's not inside your brain. It's like, I don't care if it's a piece of paper or, an online project management system like Trello and Asana, really popular ones. It doesn't matter what the tool is, but to use it. So I like to break down any kind of recurring things into whatever their time frame is. So are they daily? Are they weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? Whatever they are, like take those buckets and put the tasks into them. So then I'll have, like, for monthly, I'll have a header, it's November. Here's the things that need to happen in November. Now I have the same exact list for every month of the year. So
Oh,
whether it's um, putting emails into my email system, if it's writing a list of blog posts that I want to have, if it's updating analytics, getting to inbox zero, like whatever it is that you need to do with that frequency, you have it there. So this is where one of the online platforms can come in handy because you can literally copy and duplicate that list into the next month or to whatever time frame you want to look at. And then I really like giving some of those things a due date. Like a month is a long time. Like I can easily tell you for the next 30 days, and I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I'll pick a date for each of those and I'll put it in there. If you need to change it, like it's not a big deal, but putting that date in there helps keep you accountable. And then just getting into the routine of doing them. So wherever you keep these tasks, like checking it and going through it. So like daily tasks, it might be easy for you to have just a checklist and then you slide it into your day every day. And when you've completed that checklist, slide it into the next day. So just something that's helping you keep on track and that accountability, or something that's going to pop up and remind you like, hey, you haven't done this yet and it's November 30th.
So how do you handle things like social media versus kind of email marketing? And I think there's this, we need to have social media as part of our business, if, to attract and interact, but there's also a lot of perhaps time waste. And how do you personally balance social media for your business?
So I break like kind of all the different categories into their own separate repositories. I tend to use Trello the most, so I'll have a different board for each of those categories. So I have a board that's just emails, and then I have a board that's just social media, and then I have a hub, which is where I keep all of my like longer term ongoing things. So all of my monthly tasks are in there. Anything that's quarterly, annually, that's all in there, and then I have a week board. So I'm looking at, for keeping track of time things, I've got, my longer term stuff, then I have my right now. And I take all those other separate things. So the social media and the emails, I can look at them in their own little compartment and figure out what needs to be done when, but I'm not looking at it in my huge list of things to do. So then I can go in and I can move those things either into a monthly to do or into a weekly to do. And then that weekly to do, of course, you can go daily. But that way I'm looking at them compartmentalized so I can know what I'm working on. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but a lot of it comes down to prioritizing what truly needs to be done and kind of keeping them out of my field of vision. I mean, like literally and metaphorically, but like not having there looking at them helps keep me from being overwhelmed. And then I can intentionally decide when I'm focusing on each of those things and either put it where it needs to go or forget about it.
Right. I think there's a lot of value in, I've been using Trello, probably nowhere near to the degree you are, but that purposeful, what is this week, today, and tomorrow, and holding yourself accountable when you're letting yourself drift to something that you didn't put on today. And it's making a commitment to yourself. Like, this is what I'm going to accomplish today, taking a look at it and saying, wow, I have 4 hours to dedicate today. And I just put 12 hours worth of work in a 4 hour window. It's just probably not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So
And
setting, that's something I wanted to ask you about there.
I mean, a lot of people really like seeing like everything they have to do all at once. And if that's you, that's totally fine. But for me, if I have what I need to get done today and then like post on Instagram is in that list, like that's totally messing with the flow of my day and what like really truly needs to be done in my business. So that's why I like to keep it separate. Like I want to say, hey, I'm working on my social media right now, and open up that board and be in it. I don't want that in my like list of things that I need to do in these 2 hours that I have.
So what does that look like if you say you're working on your Instagram, like you're going to go into social and create you're going to get ready for social media on Instagram. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I guess I tend to do like a lot of batching here. So if I'm in a writing mode, I will start with captions, and I am more of a writer than a speaker or anything else. So that's usually where I start. And I'll just go in and I'll put an idea or a topic or something that's like popped into my head. And I'll do this ongoing too, and just have a big list of content ideas or partial thoughts. And then so I'll go in there when I'm in caption writing mode and I'll click on each one and I'll turn it into a caption.
Okay.
And then I can keep them there, and kind of I plan them out by category so I can see what fits into what category. And then when I'm done all the writing, I can go find all of the images. And I like using Trello for it because you can kind of do a brain dump. I feel like in some of like the Instagram schedulers, you need the image first and then you got to do the caption. And my brain just kind of doesn't work that way. So for you, it might, but I like to do it the other way. And sometimes kind of mix and match how it's going. So then once I've got all those ideas and the categories and stuff, then I'll schedule them on the calendar there, and I'll transfer that over to a scheduling program. So that way I'm just taking care of all of it at once, and I'm not sitting there each day going, what am I going to post on Instagram tonight? Or what am I even talking about this week?
Okay, good. So I know I kind of took you over into the social media, but you were talking about kind of recurring tasks versus maybe these, you know, bigger, longer term projects, like perhaps the symposium that you do a couple times a year. Maybe talking about how do you chunk down, a big project, whether it's something you've done before or you're thinking about planning out. What does that process look like for you?
For me, I start with a timeline. So I figure out whatever I'm creating needs to be live. Like, when does it need to happen? When's the best fit for my audience? When's the best fit for me? And then I work completely backwards from there. So figuring out what day the cart is going to close. Like, is it going to be the day before your program or whatever it is that you're making? Is it going to be that day before, or do you need it to close ahead of time so you can do some prep work in between something starting? So when is your cart going to close? When can people not register anymore? Then how long do you want your cart to be open? So moving forward on your calendar there. And then from there, what do you need to do? Now, if it's something you've done before, you're going to have a better idea of how long each of these things are going to take, and you can keep working backwards. Like with a symposium, this will be my 7th time doing it. So I have a really good idea of how long each of my tasks takes. So I literally use a days before calculator on the internet and just plug in my new date and reschedule everything. But if it's brand new, you've got content creation going on, things like that, I just buffer some time for each of those tasks into your launch plan. So, whether it's content creation, if it's writing emails, if it's setting up tech. And I start kind of the same way I manage my just regular weekly to-do list, is just start with a brain dump of unfiltered tasks, like everything you can think of about this project that you're going to do. Just write it all down, and then kind of break it into categories. So what do you need to do? Do you need to create the content? Do you need to write marketing emails? Are you going to promote it on social media? Do you need to create the platform to offer it? Do you need a calendar where people can schedule calls with you? Like, what are all the different things? Like, so you create those buckets, and then I'll take stuff from my to-do list and move it into each of the buckets. And I also like for a launch to have some key dates highlighted. So not every single thing may have an exact date on it, but some of those really key dates, like if you don't do this by this point in time, it's going to throw things off. And that can really help you when you're prioritizing what to do on a daily basis. Like if you say this needs to be done by Thursday, the chances of you doing the important things to get that done are so much better than like, oh, I should probably do this next.
Right. I think that's really helpful to kind of understand these, the working backward, and I think it's really helpful to organize a launch that way, because it really helps you set those key dates where you absolutely hard stop, this has to be done on this date. That way you're not crammed at the end, not really giving the launch the attention and the time that it needs, and it's always going to take longer and than you maybe thought it would. The number of tasks start to add up.
Yeah, for sure. If you can schedule in some buffer time when you're planning that out, that's always a good idea.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that, I often hear recommended, myself as well, for people who are thinking about, starting an online product, whether it's a course or, something else, about doing, a beta version. So do you have any thoughts on if you're, thinking about doing something in a beta form, kind of as a minimum viable product that would look different, or would you say that it applies equally?
So you're just asking if you would be doing something in a beta form, would the planning for
Yep.
that look different or the same? I think it would look similar. But 2 things to keep in mind. One is to make sure that you're putting real dates out there so that you absolutely have to meet your deadlines, which is also a great productivity tactic, because there's nothing more motivating than having a group of people waiting for you to give them something on a certain day. But also to really think for the timeline for your actual beta, if you are creating the content as you go, to really make sure you create a schedule that's manageable for you to be creating it. I feel like the actual creation part takes so much longer than you ever plan for. Now, it's great if you're the kind of person that thrives on deadlines and pressure, and you're like, I'm going to study at 2 o'clock in the morning before I take my exam at 6 kind of person. I mean, this could be great for you. But if you're the kind of person that really needs to think about things and like kind of go over them and edit them, then it just might not be the right structure. But I think it's going to be a very similar timeline and planning strategy, but to really, really be careful with that amount of time that you plan in your days for content creation. So if you're doing like even like a live beta boot camp sort of thing where you're teaching the material as you go and then you're going to use it again for like another launch, um, maybe for you that means moving some of your other tasks for that chunk of time either
Mm-hmm.
into a different period or seeing if there's somebody that can do them for you, or just really giving yourself some extra space and some like extra like free time for your brain too.
Yeah. No, I really think it's a good point about the content creation. If if you're doing that at the same time as it becomes a lot. Even personally, having done that recently with a beta and just felt absolutely overwhelmed, right? Because you're trying to create the content as you go, but then really kind of taking a deep breath and going, let's try this again. Let's do a round two with what I have. And it was amazing how much different I felt. I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like, this is actually really manageable. Like, the content is done, making minor changes to it. But I think you can really underestimate how taxing content creation is when you're also trying to kind of manage a program at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, some people really thrive on the excitement and you're really in it. And it's what you're focused on and it's like really invigorating. And then sometimes you're just like, I just cannot handle talking about this topic for one more week. Like, I need a break. I want to throw my computer out the window. Like, I think kind of knowing how you work and what motivates you and keeps you going, I think knowing that ahead of time for choosing your structure can be really helpful too.
Right. And I think mentally just thinking, okay, well, because I am managing both content and the rest, the really core priority of this beta was to get the content done, right?
Mhm.
And so I can refine it and giving myself a little bit of a break on the other elements that what is the real purpose of this, beta. It was being really particular about what are you trying to accomplish, versus everything's not going to be like your polished final version, right? Setting some metrics of success that you can, rather than beating yourself up, which I think is really easy to do as an entrepreneur, right? Everything should be
Yeah.
better than it
And I mean,
is.
like you said, then once you've done it the first time, and then, refining is a totally different ball game. So you've already got it there, and taking that and turning that into something else. I mean, that is really, really rewarding.
Yeah, that's a super good point. So you've talked a little bit about launch plan. Any other insight you want to share on where do you think people really kind of go wrong and what really works well for you from the status of launch? And I think if no matter if you're launching a course or maybe you're getting ready to launch seeing clients, just this whole concept of I think launching.
Um, I don't know. I think it probably really comes down to underestimating how much time certain things would take. Like, no matter what you're doing, you think, okay, I need to write some launch emails that'll take me 3 hours. And then you realize you had to write them and you had to format them. And then your email system doesn't save what you did. And oh, you need to segment them and you need to make a copy, and just, not thinking through all of those things. Like, you and I have talked about this before
Oh,
about how the like promotion and marketing of something takes like 800 times as long as the actual thing. And it's because of all of those things.
yeah. You're right. And the reality is going to take longer. Something is not going to work. Something is not going to save. You're going to lose. It just is going to happen. So I think you're right, planning in enough buffer for that. So this is what I really want to talk about. I want to check with Katie's question here about Trello. Does it work kind of with the website and the app? Do you use both versions? So does one function better than the other? Are they kind of Do you have a preference?
I think they're really compatible. I do all of my actual planning on desktop, but I'll do a lot of brain dump type stuff on the app. So for most of my boards, the very first column I have is kind of like either a master to-do list or a brain dump or whatever, and I'll put stuff in there on the app. That way I'm not like scrolling to find something. It's just there, and then I know to go back when I have some time and move that to where it needs to go. But that being said, the app is pretty good. I use an iPhone, so I don't know if it's different on other phones, but a lot of times if I have something, I can, there's just like a little shortcut where I can say, like, where you might like send a message to somebody or post to Instagram, there's like a Trello icon. So it's really easy to get to, and you can just pick what board. I also have a Gmail to Trello extension.
Oh yeah, life changing. I got the
So
Outlook extension. I was like, ooh.
So you don't even need the extension. You can just forward an email. You have an email address to each of your boards, and I just rename them in my contacts so I know which board. So you can just forward it there and I have it go into that first list. But you can also do that with the Gmail to Trello extension. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the email, there's a Trello icon, and you can tell that email what board to go to and where you want it. And that's really helpful for me for all the little things that I might forget of, like that, like they might forget about, like they go in your brain and then they're just gone. And I mean, that's me all day, like,
Yep.
constantly. So I just dump them into Trello. And then when I'm back at my desktop is when I really like kind of move them around and navigate them and look at the lists and the calendars and just be more strategic about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the big things, I struggle with Trello. Every time I would go on there, I felt like I didn't have enough command of the program to sit down and start using it. And I kept falling back to like paper and being very disorganized. And I'll try to find a link to it, but I watched a really pretty short tutorial on Trello that was one of the best ones that I'd seen, really helping me understand how the boards and things work, and then just picking a couple of boards to get started with. So for me personally, it was like a daily productivity board, and really I looked at many different ones, right? But the concept for me of there's a waiting, which is where I just dump everything. No, not waiting. It's like to be scheduled, right? So it's like it just needs my attention. It's my inbox in Trello. Like I dump stuff. So it gets off my email list. I open it once in Outlook, and you have to do something with it. You don't want to open it, close it, then open it again, close it. So everything goes on that inbox, right? And then you have today, tomorrow, this week, and waiting. So if I email my designer about something and that's in my to-do list, then I drag that one over to the waiting list because I'm waiting to hear back from someone or my web guy. And it's actually really helped me to each day I check my waiting list, I check my to-dos, plan out my week. And that alone, just picking a daily productivity one that made sense, I think is hugely valuable. And then a blog editorial one where I could keep ideas for articles, where they are, am I editing it, am I posting it, have I done the social media posts? So for content creation, my own like little soapbox here about finally getting on Trello, and I know I'm not using it to the degree that I could be, but it's been really helpful just using it in that way. So
Yeah, I started using it as more of like a content repository, like where do I keep all this stuff? And then slowly migrated more into using it as more of like an actual daily productivity management type system. And it really doesn't matter what you use. Like Asana, Trello, there's thousands of them. I love them. I think they're so cool. I want to try a different one every day, but really like pick one and use it. Like try it out. If it seems kind of intuitive for you, like go with it, stick with it, do it.
right.
If it doesn't and you're just staring at it going like, I don't have any idea. And like maybe Google one or two things or ask somebody, and feel free to ask me if you're trying to get started. But if you do that and you still don't get it, then try a different one.
Yeah.
Like it should be easy for you. It shouldn't be adding to all of the things that you have to do is learn how to use a new system. If
Right.
that, just use piece of paper.
Yeah. And the ability to I think from the app, I might do it. Like I get a lot of inspiration, even from social media or for blog articles from other people or from browsing and looking. So being able to take a screenshot of it, creating it in the app in Trello, and just dropping that image in with the idea so that when I go to need to create social media content, I can go back and go, oh, that was the Instagram post I was scanning, even things like Facebook ads where I'm like, oh, I really like the copy on that ad. I have like an idea list of like maybe when I get my act together and run Facebook ads, or screenshots of or links to emails for sales copy, like someone's email sequence that's really awesome. And I really want to take some of the elements out of that, trying to save some of that in a way that's organized and meaningful that I can access later on.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So I guess I have another, I'm becoming a Trello fan. I've never used Asana. So
I
what kind
used Asana. I really like Asana if you like looking at a list of tasks and combining them all together. So you can have like separate boards and stuff and looking at a list of all of them meshed together. I really prefer Asana for that. But Trello is much more visual. So it really depends what you're using it for and what kind of meshes with you. So I wish there was a little bit more listing in Trello.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they're both great.
they are really great tools. So one thing that as we kind of get back to productivity, and one thing I think you do really well, and one thing I personally struggle with is finishing. Okay, it's super awesome to start something new. We call it, right, the bright shiny object thing. How do when you're starting a big project, it feels really messy, and then you get to the middle where you feel like nothing is working and you're overwhelmed. What kind of tips do you have from the beginning to the middle? We've been talking a little bit about this, but do you see this often with the dietitian entrepreneurs that you work with and support? And what do you recommend with the whole starting versus finishing, the challenge of the middle?
Yeah, I think the middle is probably the hardest part. Finishing when there's like an end in sight, you kind of get that little oomph of motivation, so you can get it done and just accomplish it. But that middle, that can be really, really murky and hard. So I think the first step is like really coming up with a plan at the very beginning, kind of like we talked about before, whether it's an outline, a brain dump, like what, just really kind of step back and look at things first. But once you're in that middle, and if you're struggling with motivation, there's a couple things you can do. One, like we talked about before, put a due date on it and make it public. So, like put it on a coming soon landing page and it says December 3rd or whatever, like this is coming on this day. Or if you like put a waiting list out there, like this is coming on this day, join the waiting list, like make it like a real due date, because you're more likely to actually like take those steps to get towards it if that date is known and it's not just in your head. I think I'd like to be done by December. And then next is I would really think about, well, first, let me back up. Let me just say, this is probably where prioritizing will really, really help you. So, really looking at the list of things that you have left to do to get you to your finish line. So, what absolutely has to be done and what has to be done first? Like, what has to be done right now before you can move on to the next step and then the next step after that. So, not choosing what you want to do or be the most fun or the easiest or whatever it is, but like truly what is next in a timeline, like in a sequence of things that need to be done so you can keep moving down there. If it's something that you would like to have done, but it's not going to like actually get you to that finish line, or maybe you could get by without it and come back to it, then just don't worry about it, because then you get so lost in all of the other tasks that it's hard to do the like really important ones. And then last, I would say, if you're really struggling, like even if you've already started this project or you've put your heart and soul into building something or creating something and you really can't get it done, like you are really, really stuck, and just take a step back and think about why. Like, why are you doing it? What is the purpose? Like, what's your motivation behind it? What role does it play in your business? And really evaluate if this is your thing. Like, is this what you need to be doing? Or do you need to shift lanes and do something else, or go back to what you were doing, or like completely abandon ship? Like, that is totally fine. Sometimes we start projects that we think are going to turn out one way, and we get into them and they don't turn out. We find out we don't love them. There's a million things that can happen in the middle of that process. And if that's happening to you, like it's fine to find something else and either revisit it later or just have it not be what you're doing.
Yeah. That's really,
Like, you don't have to finish it just because you started. And I'd go through the other things first. Like, don't just like being scared or something like that. That's not a reason. But like, if it truly does not fit into your business, like, you're not doing yourself any favors by trying to like slug through it just to cross it off the list.
I think what you said about really, project managing from the beginning, right? Not just saying, well, I want to create a course on whatever, and just think that what you need to do is going to become clear to you as you go along in the process. Really spending the time to create deadlines and specific actions that you need to do to make that happen really can help get you through that middle, because then you can prioritize and you kind of have a roadmap. And that not everything, I think as we struggle with that concept of failure or not finishing, and that quitting doesn't necessarily, make you a quitter or a failure. When something just isn't working, there can be a reason why maybe it's not working. I live funny things, like I live on the Boston Marathon route, right around mile 19, which is right before we say the Heartbreak Hill for the Boston Marathon. And my running route is mile 18 to 20. And it's funny how I always think of all of the marathoners who are struggling there, and every single time, sometimes it helps you to get through when you think of other people or create a community. Even though I'm running alone, I don't feel alone, because I think of how many people who have treaded that path, how many thousands and thousands of marathon runners who have put their feet right where I am right now. And I try to, even though I may be alone, think about that community and go, I can keep picking my feet up. I can keep doing this. You're not really alone, even though it can feel that way in your business sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
So, um, I know, like, I'm not sure that everyone listening is necessarily a runner, but I think it can feel lonely, especially when you're in the middle of a project. That reaching out, having a group, Heather, you have a great group on Facebook, or making sure that sometimes you need a little support too. You need someone to say, you can do this, you've got this. This was a great idea when you're starting to doubt yourself. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find a lot of people struggle because, being an entrepreneur, it's getting more popular, but it's still not the mainstream. It's still not, what most people are doing. So it can be really hard to find somebody that can even understand like the problems you're having or the feelings or the struggles or anything. So kind of finding people that can help you in that regard can be really useful. Like, I mean, I can tell my husband, struggling with this, I'm having a problem with this, and he just kind of like stares at me. He's like, I don't get it. So just finding your tribe and make
Yeah,
a big difference.
so it makes a huge difference. So, all right, if we get I have more questions than I think I have time. So let's talk about, we talked about a lot about tools, but let's say you're sitting in listening, and myself, kind of those most important things that you're like, okay, I'm really struggling with getting things done, or I feel really overwhelmed at just the sheer number of tasks that, I want to do. What are the first couple of things you would recommend that you do to really start to make incremental improvement in getting the most important things done for your business?
Mhm. Yeah. So first, I would say we talked about this a little bit earlier, but is picking your 1 to 3 priorities for whatever the time frame you have. So, like, I do it by the day. I also do it by the week. But your 1 to 3 priorities. What, like, if those are the only things that you can do in this period of time that you have to work, what are they? And that's going to help eliminate like a lot of the fluff, like a lot of the stuff that we think is important or we think we need to be doing. But like, absolutely, you have 2 hours right now in order for X to happen. What are you going to do? So really prioritizing those. And I like that as a first step because you don't need to learn anything new. You don't need a system. You don't need anything like a piece of paper. All the systems I use, I still start my day with a piece of paper and my 3. That's what I mean. Before I open anything, I do my 3. And this is where you get really good at learning how to prioritize. So it's not easy at first. You're going to put things on that list that maybe you don't need to do first. You think you did, but as you do it and just get into the routine of doing it, you start learning what really moves you forward. So I think that's a really, really great first step. And like I said, you can do it, definitely do it for your day, for your work time, but you can also use it as a planning tool for kind of bigger picture things. But second would be to know where your time is going now. Like, what are you doing with your time? Is it truly that you don't have enough time? Are you not using your time well? Are there different things you could be doing to improve how you're using it? And then I think that's kind of where the strategies come in. So like, what are you doing with your time now? And really, where are the loopholes? Do you have too much time? Like, do you have so much time that you're not actually getting stuff done? Like, do you need to shorten your work blocks? But that would lead me to just experiment with different strategies. Like, there are so many, like some really popular ones would be like time blocking and batching, the priority matrix, using power hours. Like, you can use these by themselves, you can use them in combination, but my biggest thing is experiment with them and see what works for you. Just because somebody says this is a great time management technique doesn't mean that it's going to kind of jive with what you do naturally. Um, like, for example, I do a time management workshop in the society, my membership group, in January, and I teach time blocking because it is, I mean, it's a really, really great technique, and it can be transformative for some people. I don't use time blocking. It doesn't feel intuitive to me. Um, it doesn't feel like it meshes with what is on my priorities. Like, I have my 1 to 3 priorities, and if it doesn't fit in my time block, then it doesn't, it just, for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, my day is kind of naturally time blocked. I have 8 hours of childcare a week, and they are these certain times in the day, and the rest of life has to happen, and we've got our routines. And so it kind of naturally works. So then trying to fit everything else into those just doesn't work. So that's something that I've learned. It's a great technique, but it doesn't work for me. But then, like, on the other hand, batching that we talked about a little bit, that is, I mean, that is super, super helpful for me, like, especially when writing. I would rather write 5 email drafts all at one time, just get them out there. And then the next time I'm doing something, then I want to edit them all at the same time. Then I want to put them all in my email system and format them at the same time. Like, I just want to be in that brain mode and keep going before I'm interrupted by
Yeah.
something.
I love that idea of kind of
Yeah, but that doesn't mean like it doesn't mean batching is going to work for everyone. Like, I don't want you to hear, I do this, this is great, you should do it too, because you could batch in a way that actually burns you out. Like if I were to use discovery calls in my business, and if I were to batch them, and let's say I do 15 discovery calls every Monday, I'm an introvert. Like, I would absolutely, like, my energy and my mindset, like, it would be in the tank, and I wouldn't be able to do anything else. Like, I would get nothing else done because I would be so drained. So you got to be really careful about how you batch and whether it works for you personally. And that goes with all the strategies.
Yeah, I love the point you made about what works for you. And ultimately, it might look really silly to somebody else, but that knowing how you work, and ignoring a little bit if it's working, if you really are getting the most highest priority things done. And then a new system and a new way of doing things is probably going to feel a little bit difficult at first, and to give it time to stick and to work. So before we go, Heather, because I want to be cognizant of time for you, how can people learn more about what you're doing? Where can people find you? You mentioned the society. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you can find me at dietitianhq.com. It's my website. You can find everything there. I'm Dietitian HQ on Instagram, and I have a free community on Facebook, which is, if you search Dietitian HQ, it will come up. It's a Dietitian HQ community. And I love to be both in that group and on Instagram, and you can always reach me by email and find all my contact there. And on the website, you can find the 2 things that I do. I host a biannual symposium for entrepreneurs in the spring and the fall. So the next one will be in March. And then I do the society, which is an ongoing monthly membership where we mastermind with other dietitians. So kind of like we talked about before, finding people that get you in this entrepreneur journey and can help you with those stumbling blocks that you have in your business. That's really a lot of the work that we do in there.
Cool. Well, this was really helpful. I think it's this is hard, and I think so often I always say victim to sales pages or webinars that if you just have this certain tool or this approach or this book, like you're going to be a productivity, rock star. And I think that that's really unrealistic, and that you're not going to have the days where you feel like quitting, or that you're going to struggle, or you're going to feel overwhelmed. That is, you know, that's normal. But I think you talked about tools and technology and planning and having some strategic ways to kind of get through that. So it was really helpful for me today. So thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. If anybody has questions after that, feel free to shoot them my way and I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. So we'll be back here in a couple of weeks with Heather Kaplan talking about weight inclusive nutrition and dietetics. So hope you'll join for that. So, all right. We'll see you all next time.